Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and welcome to the Swiss Pavilion. It's a real pleasure to host you tonight for this very special event that we have prepared for you. My name is Dan Tiderini. I am project manager here at the Swiss Pavilion and working for Swissnex. Swissnex is an agency of the Swiss government to not only promote Swiss education, research and innovation abroad, but also connect it with equivalents from the entire world. And here at Expo, we have been connecting our universities, our startups, and our innovative companies with equivalents from one of the leading innovation hotspots in the world, the UAE, and from the place for innovation to happen, Expo 2020. And tonight, we have a very special evening with guests from Bites of Transformation, which is a partnership between the Università della Svizzera Italiana, the Swiss Development Corporation, and also the Swiss Permanent Representation for the UN agencies in Rome, including the FAO. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Ambassador Massimo Baggi to say a few opening remarks, our ambassador to the UAE and to Bahrain. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Dear friends of the Swiss Pavilion, it's indeed a big pleasure for me to be here. I've been here many times, and I think that I had the chance to witness the opening of probably all the contribution that our Swiss Pavilion is giving to the 11 thematic weeks at the Expo, and I'm particularly happy to be here today to give my contribution to this food, agriculture and livelihood thematic week at the Expo. I think that that was very much clear from the very beginning for us. This pavilion is not only a beautiful architecture, but it is also a lot of content. And Swissnex is contributing a lot together with all our partners to share this content here at the Swiss Pavilion. The Expo is not a fair, is much more than that. For 6 months we have the chance to have here all stakeholders of our society. We have governments that I have the chance to represent here this evening. We have NGOs, we have private companies, we have families, we have kids. Everybody's here, and I think that this is a real chance that we have to bring together and to share people and share new ideas and contribute to create these ideas around major topics like food, agriculture and livelihood, what we are doing right now. We have been doing that because we have an excellent partner, and this evening we have indeed excellent partner. We have the Università della Svizzera Italiana. I've seen briefly, hopefully we will see the director from Lugano later. We have the UAE University. We have our permanent representative at the UN in Rome, my colleague Pius. Thank you very much for being here this evening. And we have also the contribution of our embassy in Rome. And thanks to this network that we have been able to put together, we are in a position to give a contribution now to this topic. We have been doing that for almost for 5 months now, and I think that we start to understand that it was very much worth it. We had more than 30 or 40 events on this pavilion. We had more than 1 million visitors. And I think that we have been able to contribute to the success of this Expo, which is not finished yet. Switzerland is a major stakeholder of Expo in general because the government of Switzerland very much support Expo. Usually we are the very first country to confirm our participation, which is very much appreciated by the organizer. For this specific Expo, we have an additional role because we are chairing the steering committee of all participating countries, and therefore we become a kind of a privileged partner of Expo. Expo are changing, and this Expo will pave the future for the next one in Osaka, and I think that this will have that we will have the chance to continue somehow our debates. And this is, by the way, what we are doing this evening, because if you remember, the topic of the last Expo 215 in Milan was indeed food and food-related issues. We discovered how much food security is crucial. And we discovered it especially nowadays, because during the pandemic we got a little bit, maybe not scared, but at least preoccupied, because we noticed that eventually supply chain can be disrupted. And this is something that we've noticed very much here in the UAE, where 90% of whatever is consumed in terms of food is imported. And by the way, what we have seen very recently in the UAE is an increasing interest for agriculture, and also additional investment in agriculture. And be assured that when you have the chance to go in the middle of the desert in Dubai, as I had the chance to do, and to discover that there is a rice plantation, yes, a rice plantation, then you will understand that the limit is the sky. And also here, in countries where you have arid climate, you can find ways to renovate, to invest, to innovate in agriculture, for the well-being of the people, for food security, for the security of the country finally, because agriculture, of course, it's absolutely a strategic issues for all of us. So given also this continuity that we have from Milan, I'm happy that here we can continue this discussion, which certainly will not end here and will continue eventually in Osaka, but before Osaka, hopefully we will have many other occasions to do so. So again, thank you all of you, and particularly thank you to our partner to making this event possible this evening, and thank you so much for supporting the Swiss Pavilion. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Ambassador. So, as the Ambassador mentioned, the event is co-organized by Università della Svizzera Italiana and the Permanent Mission of Switzerland at United Nations Organization in Rome. So I hope that the rector is still there. So I'm really happy to give him the floor. So just for like a short introduction and some greetings.
Yes. Hello, everybody. It's fun to be in the House of Switzerland in Dubai, sitting here in Lugano, Switzerland. This is the Italian part of Switzerland. Here it is almost 4 o'clock. So I would like to thank you for the invitation to say a few words here, and I would like to greet His Excellency Massimo Baggi, Mr. Dantilarini, Professor Neumann, Divya Nakbal, and also Ambassador Pio Venubst, with whom we've been collaborating for a while, and Dottoressa Federica Frediani, whose voice I've just heard. I would also like to welcome the young change makers that will be participating, in which actually from our point of view are the real objective of all of these activities. And I also of course would like to say hello to all of you ladies and gentlemen participating here. For us at the Università della Svizzera Italiana, one of the 12 public universities in Switzerland, it is very important to contribute to what we call, the diplomacy of the civil society. I've come to understand that diplomacy, the way it was understood for a long time, has come sort of to a limit. And given the way our societies in the Western world, but also in regions like the MENA region, which is one of the focus of today's event, Well, civil society is becoming more and more important, and diplomacy has to work with civil society as well. In particular, to bring about change, we have to work with young people. So we work with young people we call young change makers. And in particular, we have been able to bring some of them to Lugano over the past 3-4 years. And with them, we have started to work on various projects. And in particular, we've been working together with, in the context of the project Bites of Transformation, which is the basis of today's session. This is already a collaboration which has been going on for over 2 years. And as you've learned, it's been put forward by the Permanent Mission of Switzerland to the United Nations organizations in Rome. So we are happy to be here. And in a sense, I'm happy to show a way in which universities, of course, not only in Switzerland, but worldwide, actually are contributing to make this world a better world, not just by doing research, not just by teaching, but by being a place where you can freely exchange ideas, bring about analysis of complex situations. And so our way of doing this was by choosing a region where actually we think we can have an impact which is important for Europe, which is important for us. We're the most Mediterranean university in Switzerland, let's say. And so we've created this Middle East Mediterranean Summer Summit, which takes place in August, and which is embedded in a larger free thinking platform. And so I think that what is happening today is one of the spin-offs of this activity, something we've not predicted, and I'm glad to see that our methodology the methodology we've developed here in Lugano to work with the young change makers has actually been deemed valuable to be applied in other contexts where you need to you start out with something which you don't know what it will lead you to, but then by bringing together people who are actually concerned and who are willing to work towards a generic goal, actually you come to agree on a certain number of important issues. And usually people go away from these workshops that we organize, richer than they were when they got to the workshop. And I hope that this is what will happen today. But I'm sure that since you're in the expert hands of the people who have already worked on these issues, this will definitely be the case. So once again, thank you for having me to say these few words. And unfortunately, I couldn't come. I was scheduled to come, but I couldn't come. And so I just let you go on with the workshop and wish you all the best for the workshop that you're going to start now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I really would like to thank you, the rector, and also to underline that we are also trying to work with the other universities here. So the idea is to work on these food systems and try to rethink the food system starting from different approaches. So we asked two different guests to join us this evening. The Professor Elke Neumann and also Mr. Divyayam Nagpal. Sorry for the misreading of your name. So the idea is really to try what we tried with our project on food system. Let's say we have different aims. One of the aims was to really rethink the food system from different perspectives and also to involve people from different backgrounds, because it's not just like a technical approach. We look at food systems as complex issues and complex topics that we need to address from different perspectives. And the other main point is that we really would like, and it's what we are doing, and also with the Middle East Mediterranean Summer Summit, is to bring and give voices to young people. You see, so for us it's really important to give space to young people to contribute and to work all together on these specific topics. So I'm really happy now to give the floor to Elke Neumann, and welcome to this event.
Thank you so much for the introduction and also for allowing me to be here again. It's really a pleasure. I was also very happy to learn about the transformation activity. So this is very, very relevant also, and I think closely linked really to what we are doing. And I hope really maybe that we can discuss collaboration in the future as well. I'm so happy to connect with the university in Lugano. Food security here in the UAE, as you already mentioned, is playing a very, very important role. It's a major governmental goal. And in line with this, in the past months, years, a lot of investment has occurred into the food and agricultural sector in this country. And part of this is also the very recent foundation of the Abu Dhabi International Virtual Research Institute for Food Security in the Drylands, which has just kicked off by the beginning of this year, and which I'm leading since the beginning of the year. And I will introduce you a little bit to what we are doing as part of this activity of this Virtual Research Institute. And I will then really look forward also to getting in touch with you, connecting. There's a lot of room for collaboration as well. Let me see then. Okay, so this is the priorities, of course, to foster food security in the drylands through collaboration between researchers, but also collaboration with industries. The drylands are a pretty large part of the world. Around 30% of the world's population live in drylands and arid lands, where resource supply for agricultural activities is very limited. And maybe it's going to be more in the future, with climate change becoming stronger, and with population growth being particularly high in the world's drylands. So we would like to work on food security, and we have, as you can see here in the upper part here of this picture, we have 5 pretty large research themes, research and educational themes, and then we also have infrastructure as part of this research institute that will bring this innovation, let's say, to the market. We have a business incubator, we have a graduate school, we also have a summer school for undergraduate students, we also have a database, we have a virtual extension office that will bring the results directly to the farmers. So, some examples of what we are planning to do, and I think this is very much in line. There is one topic here, so habitats and proximity, which has this idea of bringing everyday life of people back again together with food production. And this is exactly also what we are planning to do. Our lead topic is actually urban agriculture and agri-tech, urban plant and fish farming, where we would like to integrate food production back into urban living environments and bring people closer together with food again. We hope that we can utilize resources more efficiently this way, but we also would like to raise awareness for the value of food. Maybe you all know that around 30% of food is discarded worldwide. So, this is some of our research facilities. This is how we're working on this agri-tech production, where we try to implement high-tech, let's say, artificial intelligence, drone monitoring systems, vertical farming systems, to have very resource use efficient agricultural production systems. Indoor farming systems, now here a big topic in the UAE. We no longer grow in greenhouses, we grow in these indoor farming systems, and my colleagues and I, we are also working on this. Good, yeah, waste material recycling. When you grow food close to the city, maybe on a rooftop, yeah, or within a building, then you have the opportunity to recycle waste materials very efficiently. Yeah, so you can bring waste back into the food supply chain. And this is, of course, very important given that more than 50% of all the agricultural plants that are produced is actually waste. Yeah, because you can only eat around 45% of every plant that you grow. The rest is non-edible material. Yeah, but still produced. Plus, of the edible part, 30% is wasted in form of food waste. So waste material is very important. It's an enormous opportunity, of course. And we would like to develop so-called multi-stage waste material recycling paths. Sounds nice. Let me explain to you what that is. Yeah, let us assume, for example, we have here waste material from plant production, maybe crop residues, maybe from urban greenery, some pruning materials that have been cropped. We have also food waste. Now, probably when I ask you how to recycle this, you might say we throw it on the compost and then we put it back on the field. This is relatively easy, but we would like to do it a bit more intensive. Some of my colleagues, for example, they work on extracting food dyes or metabolites from this type of plant waste before it is actually further recycled. Food waste, we're thinking of using this for the farming of insects, and these insects can then be used as a feed for chicken, for example, protein extraction, and so on. So after this has been done, we have residues again. Yeah, waste materials again. So, should we throw this on the compost now? Not yet. We are planning to mix that and use it for the production of edible mushrooms. Yeah. So then we have another step where we can valorize this material. And then again we have residues from that production. And then we would say, okay, now maybe we can use it as a growth substrate for greenhouse crops, and then finally it can go to the compost and back into the field. Yeah, so this is an example of such a multi-stage recycling process that we are working on. So if we do that, if we bring people and food production together, and we have very close recycling paths, you need to be very careful about all health aspects. That's why we're working together with people who are in veterinary medicine and in human medicine and people from nutritional sciences to monitor diseases and pests and pathogens and their transmission through the food supply chain. As our topic is called One Health. In the end, even COVID-19 is a foodborne disease, probably. So we are using also modern technologies to track down diseases in the food supply chain. Yeah, another thing that we need to know, if we have a vision of a future society and of how future food production should work out, of course we have to do that in line with the consumer demands. Yeah, it's nice to grow insects and to recycle this way, but if nobody wants to eat them, and everyone is repelled, then it doesn't work out. Yeah, so we also need to look into the consumers and the food markets in the future. Here we have also experts doing this. And this is our last topic. We would like to use our own genetic resources here in the drylands. The desert is not empty, there's a lot of life. There are plants that are native here to this environment, microorganisms that are native, and we would like to use these as well. These are some people who are doing this already. We are working, of course, camels and date palms, everyone knows that. We also look into microalgae that can be used for food production in the future or feed production in the future, especially salt-tolerant algae are interesting for us, as you can see here. Indigenous animal breeds. We will start working on chicken, indigenous chicken, and their development for food production, for free-range production systems, and also indigenous plants and how they can be used for the production of medicine and also food. Good, these are our collaboration partners. We have a number of universities on board. Our main national partner is Khalifa University. We also collaborate with UC Davis, with Wageningen University, National University of Singapore, James Cook University, and we have a number of industry partners from the UAE and also from abroad on board. Yeah, and maybe we will soon have some additional partners here. We would be very happy to welcome more partners. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Elke. I see a lot of points in common with the manifesto of Bites of Transformation, and also a lot of points where we can really start to do concrete actions and create initiatives. Just to give you an example, among the members of the Bites of Transformation movement, there is a producer of insects for the human consumption, you see. So again, maybe changing the habits of consumers, it's also a matter of changing the narratives. I don't know, I don't want to eat insects, but I believe that eventually we can maybe change the narratives. I'm pretty sure about that. So, and also I saw a lot of different topics that are really related to our values and also to our movement. So we invited Divyam Nagpal to speak about the nexus between food, energy, lack of resources, renewable energies. So thank you very much to join us. I leave you the floor now.
Thank you very much, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here speaking on this topic of rethinking food systems at the Swiss Pavilion. I must say it's quite nice to actually be part of in-person meetings once again. It's been a while. But I represent the International Renewable Energy Agency. We are an intergovernmental organization headquartered not very far from here in Abu Dhabi, in Masdar City. We actively engage with about 184 member countries to support them in their transition to a renewable energy future. And so we're very excited to be here. Now you must be wondering why in a discussion on rethinking food systems, we have this gentleman talking about energy. Well, in fact, energy and food systems are extremely interconnected. First, and the food sector is actually a major energy consumer. So it would be hard to believe that about 30% of the world's energy is actually consumed by the food sector. So that is quite a significant share, all the way starting from primary production on farm, mechanization, moving towards transportation, processing, cold storage infrastructure, refrigeration, all the way down to when you cook your food on your electric stoves or on your LPG cylinders. Energy is needed every step of the way. So the food sector is already a major energy consumer, that's one. Second, in the agriculture sector itself, energy-related activities constitute about 33% of emissions. So energy is a major contributor to emissions within the food sector as well. And number three, as was mentioned previously, as climate impacts become more visible, as areas become more drier, rainfall becomes more erratic, we will need even more energy for adaptation. So we will have to, in the MENA region, desalination is a big source of water. Desalination is an energy-intensive process. As the aquifers dry up, we will need more energy to pump water from deeper under the ground. We will need to transport that water over longer distances. Everything will require energy. So when we talk about rethinking food systems, we can't actually disconnect it from not about rethinking about what energy is used to power those food systems, and which is where renewable energy comes into play. Now, globally, if we look at the renewable energy scenario, for the last 7 years, at least in the power sector, more renewable energy capacity has been deployed globally compared to fossil fuels and nuclear combined. So there is a momentum in favor of renewable energy towards, by virtue of the fact that they're becoming more mature, more cost effective, more affordable, but also aligned with the climate action that a lot of countries are taking, aligned with net zero and all of that. But what does that really mean for food systems? So IRENA partnered with the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. We signed an MOU last January. And one of the first outcomes of that partnership was to try and understand a little bit better in terms of what renewable energy opportunities actually bring within food systems. So when we talk about the Food System Summit, which happened in September last year, and 2 days later was the UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy, how do we marry these two processes and talk about a strategy where we advance the energy transition, but we also advance the food systems transformation in a synergistic manner? So we launched a report. I have a couple of copies here with me, but it's all available on the IRENA website, which analyzed, the opportunities that renewables bring within the agri-food system. So let me give you a few examples. So let's think about solar pumping for irrigation. Now, irrigation is a major input during the primary production stage. Yet, in many parts of Africa, even developing Asia, and even certain MENA countries, a lot of that agriculture happens through rain-fed means. So you wait for natural monsoons, and which is becoming more and more erratic. So using solar irrigation solutions by transporting water or pumping water out of aquifers for irrigation has a tremendous impact on yields, allows farmers to go into multiple cropping patterns, and thereby improves resilience and food security measures. And across MENA, we are seeing several examples of that from Morocco, Egypt, although even in the UAE, where we are displacing diesel and electricity use with solar pumping by virtue of them being more affordable and cheaper and decentralized. Another example is, of course, renewables for cold storage and refrigeration. It was mentioned that food losses are quite significant globally. A lot of those losses actually take place, especially in the developing world, take place in the first part of the value chain. So once you produce the food, and by the time you get it to the shops, half of that or 30% of that is already lost. And part of the reason for that is you don't have the cold chain infrastructure, you don't have the refrigeration infrastructure to be able to preserve the commodities. And what is needed there, among a number of other things, energy is one of the key inputs. So we are seeing a number of examples of decentralized renewables being used to sort of develop this decentralized infrastructure and reduce food losses. There are also interesting examples of greenhouses, being where renewables are being used for desalination, thermal desalination of water, but also for temperature control. So all this to say that the technology solutions already exist, and you rightly mentioned that sometimes it's not just a question of technology; it's actually a question of how do we innovate around it and make it adaptable to the local context where these need to be deployed. So our report went into a couple of recommendations. I won't get into a number of details, but I think one of the key issues really is mainstreaming sort of this cross-sector thinking when we talk about food systems transformation, or when we talk about energy transition, or we talk about water security, because the interdependencies between the three are so strong that you may start to solve one problem and you may create another problem. I'll give you one quick example. We love solar pumps. They increase irrigation capacity, they increase yields and all of that. Solar pumps, once you put the systems in there, they run on sunlight, your operational expenditure is zero, almost zero. Now a farmer can keep extracting water. Now water becomes a limitless resource because you're not actually spending the energy for that energy. And what happens when you deploy it at scale, there is a risk that you solve a food problem with an energy problem and ending up creating a water problem, right? So which is why this holistic thinking becomes so absolutely central to this conversation. Focus on awareness raising and capacity building. I think the goal is not to deploy, for my perspective, to put more solar pumps or to put more renewable energy. The goal is to place the farmer or the agri-food actor at the center of the ecosystem and see how energy or other inputs can be used to transform nutritional outcomes or food related outcomes. So we have to place these end users at the center of the ecosystem and think about how these interventions can be designed. And finally, I think the most important is really placing inclusivity at the heart of the energy and food systems transformation, because as was rightly mentioned, food is a strategic sector because of food security, but also because 2.6 billion people on the world rely on the agriculture sector for their livelihoods. So if we are transforming the food sector, we have to make sure that the youth, women, marginalized communities are able to participate in the transformation in an equal manner and become part of the solution to maximize the benefits. So in conclusion, all this to say that we are at a very important juncture where the food systems needs to transform, the energy system needs to transform. Both of them have to become more inclusive. Both of them have to become more environmentally sustainable. Both of them have to become more resilient and aligned with a 1.5 degree scenario. And which is why a joint approach is something that is required. We need to leverage on partnerships, and actually exchanges like these are quite central to that. And I'm very glad that we are getting the chance to talk about energy on this particular platform. So once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to share some of the insights from our work, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue and engagement. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for making so clear the interconnections between different sectors, and also to show really in a simple but brilliant way all these interconnections. So it was really, really clear that, again, we need the technologies, we need energy, but we need also to be inclusive. We had this really amazing workshop with young people before this public discussion, and we collected some words from them, and the words were like inclusiveness, sustainability, biodiversity. You see, so I see a lot of important key elements in there, so we can try then to again think about interconnections among the institutions, the different institutions. And now I give the floor to Giacomo. He has now the role to show us these interconnections between Bites of Transformation Project and Manifesto, and what we discussed until now. Thank you, Giacomo.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you all, and hello to all the other young change makers following online and anyone else following online. My name is Giacomo Malteni. I am a member of Bites of Transformation. I'm very happy to be here to talk with you all, and I want to extend a huge thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think that we talk so much about inclusivity and having dialogue with young people, but really, as a young person, to be able to talk with you all, it is massively significant, and it is truly, truly an honor to be able to represent this organization. Organization, project, we're going to go with movement, actually. I think that we've gone on to movement. So, Bites of Transformation, what is it? Who are we? Well, I think I'm going to start with a little bit of how this began. And I think that Switzerland and the role of the permanent mission is really important. The funding from the SEC as well is really important. So the Swiss government gave the opportunity to young people to come together. They gave the opportunity for young people to have a chance to express themselves, to give voice to what their ambitions are, their vision of the future is, what they want to see, what they think needs to be changed. Now, this is an integral role in creating new food systems. You need the role of young people. Why? Well, young people, they're consumers today, but when we talk about new technologies, they're the engineers that we need. They're the labor force of tomorrow. They're the policymakers of tomorrow. They're the parents of tomorrow. Young people are going to inherit the future that we create through the policy decisions and the business decisions that we make today. So this is why young people need to be heard. This is why young people need to be invited and included in these types of discussions. So Bites of Transformation started out with a group of 40-odd young people connecting on a Zoom call in October 2020 to basically have a discussion on what we could do. And here we are. I get to represent this group in Dubai at the World Expo, and I think that's an incredible testament to the work that the young people have done in sort of creating a unifying vision and also bringing forward new lines of action. So Bites of Transformation started off with the need to sort of develop what is our common vision, what is our perspective on the future for food systems, what is the perspective on the future for how we discuss food systems and how we actually create and enable the environment to deliver this transition. In order to do this, we figured we need to be a movement of change, and so with that we need a theory of change, and with that we need a manifesto, we need a written document to give us a purpose, a clear understanding not only of the way that we're going to work, but also what our values and our beliefs are. And this is important because this is how we make this not represent a time or a space, not represent one group of people, but represent as many people as we can to come together to really emphasize the need for a transition united. A transition that brings many people in, a transition that makes sense. So how did we make sense of it? Because we're talking about food systems, and as we've heard, then it's not just food systems, it's energy systems, and then it's not just energy and food, it's also water systems. And then don't get me started on plastic and everything else. Where do you start? Well, you start about talking about what do you talk about? So we started with narratives and advocacy. And in our manifesto, what we ended up with was 6 main chapters. So we discussed in narratives and advocacy, how do things get discussed now? What is written now? What is the purpose of these different narratives and what do they lead to? Who's advocating for them? Now, young people, and many young people have been inspired by Greta, and I think that she's done a phenomenal job of bringing forward a new form of advocacy. But when we talk about advocacy, we also need to talk about action. And so when there is an advocate for a certain narrative, there needs to be an action behind it. And this is something that we deeply also ingrained in our manifesto and in our project, is how can we also be actors of the change that we want to bring forward. So in narrative and advocacy, we discuss this from our different backgrounds. And I think maybe it's important to also understand that Bites of Transformation is not a group of farmers. It's not a group of financial professionals. It's not a group of policymaking professionals. It's a little bit of everyone. And I think that this type of diversity that was given to the group, that was sort of inherent in creating the project, also created the manifesto and the way that it worked by bringing together the different specializations that each young person had and combining those with those values and beliefs. So a lawyer can discuss the narratives and advocacy as much as a policymaker, but the differences in terms of policymaking and legal implementation are going to create nuance. And so when we finished discussing, okay, how are things discussed, we said, let's get a little bit more granular. Where do people live? Habitats and proximity became chapter 2. As we are in a context of rapid urbanization, we have to discuss what happens when everybody is moving into a densely populated area. What are the ways of eating? What are the ways of procuring food? What about the peri-urban areas that are expanding rapidly around them? Then you start talking about water and how you produce enough infrastructure fast enough with the rate of change, of the movement of people. That brought us to a logical third chapter, the diversity of food systems. As a group of young people that came from different parts of the world, it was natural to discuss the food system where I come from looks like this. Myself, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from outside of Detroit, Michigan. I know a lot about corn. And I know a lot about getting food imported from Mexico and Canada. Unfortunately, that's not the same for everyone else. But that's also a fortunate element, because when you talk about food systems, you need to talk about diversity of food systems. And we did not go into discussing what one place needs to start first. We had to discuss also how can we change these together, because this transformation needs to happen together. It needs to happen in many places at once with many different sectors. From there, we had the discussion of, well, where do we start? History is a great teacher. History showed us there are traditions There are cultural elements that show us in different parts of the world how food was produced. Now we combine that with the technology that brought us to digitalization and knowledge. I'll move this chair so everyone over here can see. When you start to discuss new agricultural methods in urban farming, in insect farming, in aquaponics, you really start to uncover not only the different cultures and traditions that worked in the past, but you discover new ways to create new traditions, to create new cultural ways of production, of consumption, to bring things forward. And again, this was a project that started online with 50 strangers. So there's also the communication element that is an imperative to making sure that these ideas are shared, that these emotions are shared, that these elements are transferred to others, because again, this transformation needs to happen on a larger scale. And then one of the most important elements that we discussed is affordability and true value, because none of this else matters if people can't afford good food. None of this matters if there isn't value to that food, if they cannot happily sit down with their family, with their friends, socialize, and enjoy the value of food and the food systems that produced it. Now, internalizing the cost from the externalities that come with food production, that's a difficult task. But again, that brings us back to why bites of transformation, because we're young people and we have to go to work. We have to go to university. If we want to learn something, we need to collaborate with universities on how we change the curriculum to make sure that we are getting the knowledge that we need to do the jobs that we need to do for this transformation. To make sure that our education system follows also with the labor market, that the labor market follows with the education system. Because without this interconnection, without young people also at the core of providing the insights of what we need to do for the future, we as young people take this upon our shoulders because we want to, because we're passionate, and because we care. And I think that that is such an incredible element of this project, is that we were given the opportunity, we were given the space, we were given the funding, and we were given the time. And I think that that is something that is so important to all of us, is to have this opportunity, to have our voice shared with others, to create the new curriculums, to create the new jobs, to create the new lifestyles, and then ultimately together to create the new food systems. And so I thank you again for the opportunity. And now, Bites of Transformation, we continue on with our lines of action. We have several projects that we're working on in different areas of food. Again, we had people specializing in personalized nutrition, in urban farming, in actually even another gentleman seeing all of these things. I had a lot of great memories of the group, a gentleman studying grape leaves from drones to know when the grape is ready to pick for wine. And so having all of these young people from these different parts of food systems, there are a lot of ideas and projects that are ready to be implemented. And so that is now what this food movement has become. It has become a space to share that knowledge, to share what is being worked on and who is doing it. Where is the research that we need to read? What is the education that we need to receive? And then how can we get funding to do what we need to do? And this is how the movement has progressed, and this is where the movement will continue to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Giacomo. So this was not really well organized from the very beginning the way we want to continue. So, but basically now what I'm going to do and what I'm going to try to do is that instead of being representing the role as a permanent representative of Switzerland to the United Nations in Rome, I'm trying to work out as a journalist. So basically I'm going to interview you, some of the young ones, some of the maybe less young one, and then try to see if this we can make some sense of it. We had some discussions when we had another event on the Farm to Fork European Union program, where actually we realized that we Swiss we are cut out because we are not part of the Horizons research program anymore. So we say, okay, then if we cannot go with the European Union, we go global. No, I'm joking. So we are just I will try to do my best and to try to see also if we can keep some kind of a crispy kind of reactions. So there are here came at least 4 of the members, active members of the group. So one is Giacomo, introduce himself. Another one is Iyad, he's a lawyer. Oh yes, you should come here. Sorry. You both, can you come and maybe you stay there so I can go from one question to another. And so yes, join. Yeah, come. And then Lindsay, let me add a chair there. Okay. But I'm going to interview them, but I'm going to interview you too. And I fear that they are going to interview us as well, but let's see at the end. Okay. Leah, lawyer. What's the point in joining this group? I mean, we're talking about agriculture, talking about hydroponics, about the use of wood and so on. What's the point of you being part of this group?
To be fast. Yes. Yes.
Not too furious.
To do a change, you need to change the laws, to change the norms. So I part of this because it's really important for me as a refugee, as a growing up in the Middle East in Jordan. Like one of the words that came on all this manifesto is like affordability, accessibility, and fair distribution. That's 3 important words for us. And that's one of the biggest reasons like to be part of this group and to continue in this group.
Thank you. And by the way, one of the Swiss young ones participating in this, we're talking about the insects, his activities was actually, he wanted to produce insects for consumption, for human consumption, and realizing that in Switzerland we didn't have the legal basis to do that. So he started without being, if you want, illegal. And so actually his first work was to change the law in Switzerland. He actually did it. And he was 25 years old or something like this. Yeah. If you want to change, you can. I mean, what about you? So you are kind of a civil engineer, recycled civil engineer, right? Something like this? Or
Environmental management, wastewater, recycling, and then agricultural heritage systems.
wow.
So,
Why? What's the message there? Why you
well, for me, yeah, I would say, as you can see, like it's a kind of a messy background in education, leaning towards more social values. I was always having these kind of value issues for myself and purpose issues for myself that I would see at some individual levels, maybe we will have the power to change, but how it can happen like socially. So going back to why I joined the Bites of Transformation, or why it was attractive to me, was that I really wanted to hang out with some other young people who have the same values as me, but different backgrounds from all over the world, diverse people, to see like, is this only because of where I live and where I come from, or I can still share the same values with other people from around the world? How I can basically find colleagues and friends to come together and fight, all of us, for the same sort of passion to transform the food systems, well, a better food systems that we envisaged through the manifesto.
And you, Lindsay, is it working? Yeah, thanks. So actually, when we first met, you were actually president of a worldwide younger association on water, right? And we're talking about transboundary water management. So what's the point for you being here? Here, what's a question, by the way? Go ahead.
Yeah, beyond the kind of immediate connection of water, without water, there's no food. Also working on water, energy, food nexus related issues. And for the World Youth Parliament for Water, we spent a lot of time working with Blue Peace, so this international transboundary cooperation. And the movement that came from that, I saw the Bites of Transformation being an opportunity to create, I don't want to say another movement, but another movement of young people from different backgrounds, from different cultures. And I really feel like the solutions that we develop come from these diverse backgrounds. And I think that's probably the biggest inspiring thing about Bites of Transformation is this community of empowerment, but of diverse thinking, of different solutions from different parts of the world.
And actually, I see some of the ladies that participate in the workshop today that you are still here, and so on. Actually, you can witness that Lindsay didn't come as an expert of water, right? She came as a motivating for the young ones to participate and create movements. Actually, this was the task of today's workshop, not going necessarily into technicalities of water-related issues, but about how can the young ones participate and interact and actually even take the lead. As I was saying, the example before about our young ones that is helping to change the law in a country in a very short time. This is leadership in what you're doing. Giacomo, again, maybe coming back, and then I'm going here and there because actually I want to know a little bit more about certain issues specifically. You're talking about education and curriculum. So is this the curriculums that you are having today in related to food systems? Is it what you would like to see in the future, or you would like to see, I don't know, maybe not the University of Uzi, because I don't think you have something related to food as a university, but others like polytechnics and so on. Would you like to see, or did you in your group, did you discuss about curriculum for the future? What are you looking for? Is it what you're having is fine, or you want to change something?
I think it's difficult to be a young person looking for education to pinpoint exactly what it is that you want to learn. I
will rephrase the question another way, because this is what I heard in several times in the discussion among the young ones. Are you willing to be, if you want to go in agriculture, what is happening today? Because we have seen the age of farmers, at least in part of the world, really increasing. So the average in Europe, the average of farmers are 60 years old, and there is no young ones wanting to get into it. So why? What's going on? Is it about education? Is it about something else? Or is it about another way of getting together into production and food systems?
Yeah. So from my personal experience, again, I went from the Midwest, and I didn't like the food systems I was surrounded by, and I did my master's education at Wageningen University, one of the partners here of the UAE University, which is a food and agriculture university. And many people asked me when I went there, they said, well, do you plan to be a farmer? And I said, no, but I like food systems and I want to work with food systems. And they said, why are you going to a food and agriculture university if you don't want to be a farmer? And I said, well, I need to learn about the technicality of food systems. And I said, okay. And so when I studied environmental policy there, they said, well, you want to be a policymaker? And I said, no, not really. I'm not sure what I want to do yet, but I feel I need to, having studied finance and policy, I need to combine the two systems to work with food systems. And so as you go on to create this opportunity, I think that young people are sort of very much so put in already in a silo through the educational choices that they make, and there's not the opportunity to expand beyond what is the title of my degree or what is the courses that I took as my master's specialization.
What Giacomo is saying is something that is not easy, it's difficult, because you're saying on the one hand, there is need to know much more details what's going on in a specific field, but at the same time we need the very same person or same people having a systemic perspective. Is it doable? Is it doable as a one being, or we need to get the best use of connectivity, for instance, and so create other ways to stay together? So I say, we'll see you later. Thanks.
Can I add one thing on that? About that?
One.
Yeah, just quickly on this.
By the way, what are you doing then now in your job?
Oh, yeah. It's a great question.
I'm curious.
Now I have entered the space of working in ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and private equity.
So basically finance. Okay, then go ahead. You want to say?
Yeah. No, I think when we talk about curriculum and we talk about all of these different chapters that we have, I mean, in the group you had lawyers, you had architects, you had people working in different parts of the farming system as well, not just one farmer, because a farmer is not just a farmer anymore. A mushroom farmer is different than an urban farmer, different than a traditional dairy farmer. In empowering cultures, we have a lot of activism from the youth side.
You're too long.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm the journalist. So I learned that we have to be cut when usually I'm there. I need to be very short. Can I go, Liad? Because we're talking about legal. It's just about legal aspects or something else. Are we talking about here? Here there is a word, nice word, true value. What is your take on this? Why true value? What does it mean? What does it mean for you, true value in the manifesto?
What is for us is like what is the value of food that we are consuming, where it's come, how it's like secure, the value of food if it's coming from a clean source or not clean source, especially if it's a situation of uprising, and which is the reason of the uprising is the food. That's what it's come to me.
So is it correct if I say that true cost, because this is a subject we are discussing quite often, we can hear true costs of food and true values are not necessarily equal, right?
No.
This is what you want to say. So what's the difference between the two? And then maybe you can get help from Amin.
Well, to be honest, I wanted to actually answer something to the first question that you asked Giacomo, like something related to that.
I know I'm the journalist. You asked to first, then you get there anyway. I know you.
So
you
this
will get
is
there anyway. We'll start by answering to the question
about the true value.
Or true cost, if you prefer, because
True
actually
cost,
true
yeah,
cost
yeah.
could be also something
So,
that is
I
related
mean,
also
to
to
me,
your
since I've been now working with a program of agricultural heritage systems, I've been working with the FAO for 3-4 years and being sometimes in touch with some farmers and with big corporates in the organization to see how actually the food system works. And to me, the way that the food is actually being valued is absolutely unfair. I mean, from my point of view, from my passion, from the environmental point of view, seeing how there is no advocate for the environment, there is no advocate for water, no advocate for soil. This, for me, is a problem, like a concrete problem that I, for example, observe here when I see a bottle of water being sold like roughly around $1.50, and then seeing a kilo of sheep meat imported from Azerbaijan, for example, being sold for like $5-6, while that sheep has been consuming something worth like $200 of water until 3 months, like clean water, and then being sold at a low price.
So basically, the point you're making is that the true costs. Let's stick to the true costs, and then we'll go back to the true value, right? But if we stick to the true cost, the message is what we are actually paying in some parts of the world, at least, is not covering the real cost, hidden or not hidden costs in relation to what we are producing, right? Put it this way.
Commoditized the natural resources somehow.
Okay. So what does it mean in terms of, for instance, of water?
True value of water?
And commoditizing and true value?
That's a big question.
Yeah. Then we will get the help. Some of the young ones had some ideas as well during their workshop on the water.
Yeah, when I think about, well, let's say start with the true value of water and of food, I'm thinking about the whole production line, the whole cycle of water, where it comes from transporting it, where it reaches the crops that we produce our food, and thinking about the value chain of in which ways are we wasting water, in which way are we consuming it. And I think to fully value water in the system is to not waste it.
One is the waste, okay, but trying to link what you're saying through the lenses of water specifically, because in this region I think is a key element related also to food systems, right? So basically what you are saying, no, is related to the fact that water is considered strategic for everyone, right? And actually, there is a tendency even not to share data, not to share information from one country to another, as if it's something that could be simply kept in our own interest, our own way of looking at things, right? But actually, there is the point in relation to the commodity water is that there is a competition in the uses. So there is not necessarily enough to do the same things, all the things we would like to do with the same kind of water at the same time, unless we have a way to make the best use of it. And this is going technical. For instance, the schools, what you presented right in your presentation is also behind this is also the best use is not only of recycling all the material, organic material, but is also the best uses of water. I suppose is one very, very important topic. That's at least what has been taught today during and after the workshop, right? But how you link this then to the value? Because the big discussion about water is always, does water have a price? It is a public good, should not have a price, should be for free, basically. But what is cost is the service the water is offering, right? Can you explain two elements on this? And then we link it then to the values of the food system.
Yeah. We value what we pay for, the things that we buy, the clothes we buy, the houses we buy, the things that we have to work for and pay for, we put value in it. So I do think in some sense that there needs to be a price structure around water. If we don't have it, then it gets used and it like unsurmountably if there's not a price structure. So I think having that value system, but is in an equitable way, is really important.
This is the big discussion about the true cost of food behind this. Because if you're not even allowed to start discussing about what could be the price actually that you would have to pay if you actually would like to cover all the costs, as coming back to the meat we were talking about, this is a big issue, because this why I was saying, pointing out to you, to finance, you're going to go to ESG, and then I'm coming to you, sorry, but to ESG, finance. So what has to do with these food systems? So banks or financial system, does anything to in the future? Because now what we do is what in terms of ESG? ESG stands for
environmental, social governance.
Okay, but this is seen by the financial system at entry point, not at the impact point. This means that if you don't have environmental, social governance minimum standards, you simply don't get the money. This is the point. While actually, the future of the system, the financial system, should be what? Also related to food systems.
You would like me to answer what the future of the financial system
Yeah, but in 3 seconds.
Well, I think in relation to food systems, you have first you have obviously everyone looks at it as a risk. So you have transition risk, you have physical risks in terms of what can you potentially lose. But there's also a big opportunity in terms of financing systems that are regenerative, financing systems that provide value beyond necessarily a financial value. And this is where the system is coming around to, is what is the societal value that this is given? What is the environmental value in terms of the carbon sink that this project might create? And I think that this is where things start to change, because you have a stronger society when you have a stronger food system. Again, you don't have uprisings, you don't have famine, you don't have impacts on the healthcare system, because you don't have the problems related to inadequacies of food. And I think that this is where the circle starts to wrap.
Thank you. So if you would, Iliad, you would have to go and meet the people in the stock exchange in London and try to sell a new way to calculate finance and getting support to different actions. Let's imagine a project of vertical farming, for instance, in a refugee camp. What would you tell them in terms of returns of the investment?
Security. Like if I came from a lawyer who was working with counterterrorism, death penalty, Guantanamo, all of this. And when I looked at the sources of all of this problem, food security and security. So if you want to save the London stock market, you have to stop this. Let's say, I don't want to go deep on the terrorism things, but like we need solution on the ground, solution where's the sources of all of this uprising, not just a program and development program, just from the roots.
what does it mean? It means that when we're talking, sorry, I'm a little bit pushing to the limit, the discussion, but I think this is the journalist's role, right? So, what actually a similar conversation was happened actually in the stock exchange market, and actually I posed a question to the finance people there, and I say, what is the financial value of an agreement in using shared use of waters among different sectors in different regions? What would be in a way that leads into assure and strengthen peaceful processes, or peace in a different region related to the uses of water? And I asked, what would be the financial return, the financial value of it? And then they say, we cannot even calculate. It's too big to calculate. And I say, okay, if it's too big to calculate, why nobody in the finance industry is working on true costs and true values? Because this is at the end what we are talking about. And yeah, this is the end. Very concretely speaking, is this. And then this means that all the group, what is working, is not just working on is nice theories of very well-fed or whatever, or upper class people, but it's that want to live on values, but is also behind this. There is also an intention to try to push for changes that are important in recognizing certain things. If we don't recognize the true cost of food and the true values of food, how can we actually come to make something sustainable? And this, I can tell you, this was one of the subjects. This group was supposed to meet also in the World Economic Forum. There is actually one of the groups, she's actually worked on the true cost of it, was going to meet the World Economic Forum people. They will be doing in May. Because actually, at the World Economic Forum, they are recognizing that actually this is the organizer, the Schwab, that said in food systems, the key elements are true costs and true values. And this statement came after discussing with this group. I'm not saying that there is a direct relation, but I do say there is a direct relation. But I'm not saying it, because I'm a journalist. Right? What time do we have still? Still time for a few questions? When we have to close? Maybe I would like to still, if you allow me, to still open the door for, if there is any question or anything you would like to ask to the young ones. This is an opportunity. I will just do the go in between. Is there anything you would like to ask them? And then if there is nothing you would like to ask them, then I would like to ask you if there is anything you would like to ask us. So this is fair enough. Please.
I just want to ask about this manifesto of transformation. The chapters that you have finalized for this manifesto, is it like fixed or is it flexible for any future modifications with respect to the time and the available resources?
Can I go first? Sure, of course. Well, I would say of course the manifesto is a document, and this was the only way we could bring down something that is going to stay solid for all of us, representing all of us. But it doesn't mean this manifesto is a political document that has to say like this. It's, for us, it's the call, as Giacomo well just put it in words, that it's something that it's our values, it's reflecting what we believe in. So it's somehow our culture, it's a way of living that we all agree on. So regardless if this paper, I don't know, gets destroyed or whatever, but this culture is still going to stay alive among us. We are still living based on these beliefs and trying to make change by reflecting the changes that we make on ourselves. So if new members want to join the BICEP transformation and this document requires to modify, of course it's open, just like any other culture that is dynamic, that is changing all the time.
But this comes with a caveat. said, which is the methodology that the Università Svizzera Italiana brought in order to get to this manifesto. So what was because it looks as simple. You really say, oh, it's very simple. But I can tell you that even in people thinking more or less in the same way, getting to agree and putting something there together written was not that easy. So the methodology was indicating you are going to write something only when you all agree that this is what you want to put. So this means if you have something else you want to bring, you have to get to the group and the group has to say, yeah, I like it. Or I disagree with that one, and then come with another proposal, and then if the group is agreeing on this, then you change it. Because this is the rule of the game. Because I can tell you, representing Switzerland, the United Nations, and actually all this project was born with the idea of giving a voice and opening the space for the young ones to participate in the process leading to the United Nations Food System Summit. And then when we got to the results, the United Nations Food System Summit was basically held in New York, first in Italy, then in New York in October 2021. Yes, we have coalition, we have activities, but do we have a shared vision? No. We could not make it because it was too complex and too little time to do that. So the value for me of this is that they stick together. And actually they've been traveling around, the group is traveling around the world with their completely different people, completely different backgrounds and so on, but they stick to the one voice. They negotiate, keep negotiating. I mean, in each workshop is different. We never know how it's going to continue, but keep negotiating, keep changing who does what and so on, who says what. Because this is part of the point. Trying to find a common ground. And this is also one of the reasons why it's here with the Swiss, because somebody told somebody very famous, dear to us, told many years ago to me, say that, the success of Switzerland is you manage to institutionalize processes leading to a compromise. So the winner takes it all issue does not exist. So, and it is compromising, basically. But in the same time, put your values there, boom, put them on the table. So, putting the values on the table, what about concrete action on the daily life? This was part of the discussion of
I think
with the very young ones today.
This was something that maybe going to the chapter of renew traditions and empower cultures, we actually talked, if we're talking about renewing a tradition, who's going to do that? It's going to be the youth. You're not going to change the tradition of those who want to keep it. But of course, we need, when it's coming to changing a culture, a tradition, which is a social way of living, of society, there's always resistance. So why not, if we think that a certain culture has to change for the better of the environment, for the better of our food systems, why not trying to first work that on ourselves? And there was something that I said that we thought that, I think we all agree that before we want to rule a city, we first have to put our own household in order. So I think this is something that we were mostly focusing on, to work on our own individual.
Go ahead.
See, I just want to ask, have you considered time as a factor in your manifesto? Because the rate at which the world is changing, and it's easier to say things than to do. And I am saying this because I myself is a lawyer turned a farmer. I run India's biggest vertical farm. So I know it's not easy to cooperate. It's not an overnight journey to form partnerships or to work with the government. So I have taken a step to recognize hydroponics in India. So I have had high-level meetings with the ministers, and if I tell them that we are growing plants in water, they are like, no, that's not possible. So I think that at least a decade it will take for everybody to understand concepts, understand modernizations. But I guess it will be too late till then. So have you considered time, and are you guys working on it?
Actually, we started a project all together. It is vertical farming in the refugee camps. Okay, the same, your concept, the same, the institute. to work, because why? I just want to go back to why. Refugees or we consider like food is right, but still they don't have the right to resources, which is really important, the resources, not just the legal, the food aid. The idea is we try to provide these sources in these small places to do the vertical farming, the aquaponic, the hydroponic, the other type too of farming. But as I said, I'm a lawyer too. We have a lack of water there in Middle East. That's important. Let's say the law. Let's talk about the law. There's a term called the gray water. I think you know the gray water is like the waste water that could be used in this farming. The problem is the law that some government they refuse to use this water for. So that's why we are started, but still crushed with different obstacles like law, society, refugee that you have to leave, all of this kind of things.
To Giacomo, then I will also add something about timing relating to diplomacy. Then maybe as a journalist, I will just shift a moment.
Do you want to join Bites of Transformation is my first question. Yes, it's super cool. No, I think... I'm also 25 years, so... Amazing. I am as well, so...
I'm
fantastic.
18, but...
Yeah. I think this element of time is something that we feel a tremendous pressure because of it. And I think that that's really where a lot of us draw the energy from, is we need to move quickly, we need to move with precision as well. And that is something that we've kind of tried to capture within our group as well, is bringing together so many different people from so many different parts of society, both cultural elements, but also professional elements that need to move and transition together. That element of speed and that element of time pressure is very much prominent in all of our lives and all of the work that we're doing. And so that's sort of a big part of where we try and help each other as well. Sharing information, this is happening over here, this is what's going on, so that everything that does need to transition can transition as uniformly as possible across sectors, across boundaries, and across generations too.
But do you guys have diplomacy support or somebody supporting you? Okay.
Yeah, I think.
I joined very late, so I had no idea.
No, it's true. It's
No, actually. No, sure. You're perfectly right, and the point is that this is the reason why I want to share one element related to diplomacy and time and or discussion, time or space, because another thing it was said is about not mentioning space, because in diplomacy, as soon as you start putting pressure in terms of time, and you say okay, and this means you start pointing at someone and say you should do this now. This is where you start getting into trouble. So it is important. This work started with the journey of Greta Thunberg showing that actually food systems are not sustainable in New York, and then the United Nations Secretary General called for the Food Systems Summit, and the process was supposed to be an intergovernmental process, and instead of this it became a People Summit, and so on and so on. Right? But if we would have started saying putting pressures in time or in space, immediately it comes a divide, because then people will say, okay, you in the north, you've been squandering water all the time you wanted, and now you're telling us that we have to change. No, now it's our turn to do whatever we want, right? And so it gets immediately politically tense, and this is not the point. This is not the point. So the answer, I'm afraid the answer to your question, time is a tricky one. The best way to move faster is maybe not to talk about time, even though you know that time is limited. And the point is how you make smart coalitions in order to kind of swim and find a way around things. And then we know that the legal framework are changing on a certain speed. They have certain speed. Political speed is different and is not really related to these issues, right? And then you simply have different mechanisms that are turning in different times, and this is where you need to work with. Did you want to ask, before we go to closing, because I think you want us to close, right? You want to ask...
I asked one question I had for Elke.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, in the presentation, I don't know, I think these are all right. Yeah, it's fine. My voice is loud enough. Yeah? Okay. In the presentation that you had, I mean, I want to relate that to the manifesto. I saw all the very high-end research and technology that you're doing, and I really loved all of that multi-stage recycling that was happening there. And I was supposing that this is, for example, a research that is happening in the UAE with the ambition to upscale. So, upscale for UAE to become independent, for example, for food import, like as much as they can, and many other resources that were recycled. So, going back to narratives and advocacy, from the current, I mean, this is only my own personal view. From the current reality that I see in the UAE, yes, for the human resources in UAE, if this research is going, I mean, this research project is going to be upscaled for UAE, who are the human resources going to be? Are they going to be UAE residents or immigrants that are mainly in the most of the industries working here around? It's a cultural thing.
Yeah, we are indeed targeting our own graduates. We have a business incubator where we hope that we can bring the ideas to the market through spin-offs, that small companies operated by young professionals like you who are recent graduates who have maybe worked on your diploma thesis or master thesis on a certain new technology, and then you say, hey, I want to have my own business based on this technology. This is a bit our dream. We are targeting mainly nationals, of course, because we would like to see more of our young graduates to become entrepreneurs, but it is not exclusive at all.
Mainly my question was that, have you done policy research about this? That, like for UAE, policy research that this can be implemented like in a bigger scale?
Naya, I think for this we would need to know first which technologies exactly we are going to develop. No, I think this is still to some extent open.
I think is fair enough your answer. What maybe a message here is that everyone is trying to. This is the reason why I like your aspirational vision, is because it's kind of a guiding somewhere star, and everything is complex. So everyone is trying to reduce complexity in a way that things are doable and feasible. And then we are talking about doing concrete things. If you manage to get even one of these startup working, then you can open up another debate. You can also discuss how you push the limits, how far it goes, all this. So the important is to on the one hand stay focused, as you were being in your presentation was very clear, but behind this there are all these questions. I mean, when you make the presentation, I was almost ticking the boxes of the 6 paragraphs, and well, it makes sense. It's amazing. You can have reading a manifesto in a philosophical manner, or you can read it in a technical manner, but the important thing is that you have the common ground that stays, right? This is basically what we're trying to support the young ones in this. And just to answer to you also, the support from let's say from Switzerland, the initial idea, it was not to just do it like this, but the initial idea was suppose the process to be an intergovernmental. No? The intergovernmental means what? Positions, negotiations. And what we did already in the past, and Lindsay is a witness, she was part of this process with on the water, when we were discussing about transboundary water management, which is actually a highly sensitive issue everywhere. In the goal 6 of the 2030 agenda, we managed to keep the term transboundary thanks to the work done by the young ones that actually gave us, in 31 countries, the mandate to negotiate things. So at the beginning, the idea was to have in the food systems, the young ones also producing actually some text that we could bring into the negotiating process to bring the change. Then it turned from an intergovernmental into a people ones. Okay, now you are free and develop your own vision, and we stick to your vision. We never try to influence this. But of course, there are things that were at the beginning of the discussion. Is what urbanization, rapid urbanization is everywhere, is happening, right? Abandoning marginal areas around the urban areas, the disconnection between rural and urban, the recognition of not only health in terms of from the production side, but the link between food and determinants of health, including the social determinants of health, because we're talking about the conditions and the access to food. It can be really different. 3 minutes? 3 minutes. No, you say 3. You don't know, so 3 means 5. Okay, fine. From a journalist perspective. No, actually, I'm joking. So let me conclude maybe here the reflection, but to understand that of course there are always interests. No, there is always something that has a kind of an interest. But the interest in this specific case is trying to get the recognition to at least the true cost issue and the true value issues, and then working backwards and giving the possibility for future activities by the young ones of today. They will be already the middle age of tomorrow, and then they will have to work with the young ones of tomorrow. But I would like to have Stefano, if you allow me, because we were supposed to be the journalists together with Stefano Marguccio. But then we say that it's getting too complicated to pass in micro. We only have 2 micros. So instead of having the Swiss with the concluding remarks of this workshop, why not you?
Thank you. Let's say this.
Maybe you should tell who.
Hello. Ecco.
Why you?
So, thank you, Pio. My name is Stefano Marguccio. I am actually heading the office of the Director General of IRENA, of the International Energy Renewable Energy Agency here in Abu Dhabi. But as a background, I'm a diplomat. I'm an Italian diplomat. I worked with Pio for a few years while he was not yet the ambassador to the United Nations in Rome, but he was still working in the representation of Switzerland to the United Nations there, and I was doing the same job for the Italian permanent representation. So it's for me it's a pleasure to be here with him today, and somehow close a circle, and as I was listening to all of you with the idea of trying to say something meaningful at the end of this discussion, I was thinking, well, first we see food production, and I was triggered by the presentation of Elke. Well, there is nothing like food that is circular, and nature is circular. No, if we think about it, we've been working for centuries to make nature linear. Somehow, we have been trying to control nature in order to make it a linear process, like producing this chair or these tiles on the floor. And what is happening now is that somehow we are understanding that this doesn't work, and we are going back to circular. If we think that food is a good, of course, every time there is a crisis, whether it's a financial crisis like in 2008, COVID now, a war, the first 2 goods that spike in price are food and energy. This was very clear also from the IRENA report that we showed today. So I think this time with the COVID crisis, multilateral diplomacy tried to make its part, calling for a food summit and a high-level dialogue on energy. The last high-level dialogue on energy was in the 80s when there was the oil crisis due to war. So somehow I think diplomacy has been trying to make what it should be built for, building bridges, trying to find common solutions. And I think it's very natural that this initiative came from Switzerland, with somehow the motherland of dialogue. At the same time, what I think is that we are probably doing something more here. COVID gave us a big opportunity to capitalize on history somehow, but I think it's also accelerating some processes and making this going back from linear to circular a little bit faster. I think this bites of transformation is the ultimate COVID narrative, because all started with a Zoom call. So, I mean, basically, if it was not for COVID, food bites of transformation would have probably cost much more, and to put everybody together, it would have taken more time. So now we are in this phase where it is clear that countries have to cooperate. We are here in Expo, where somehow we are showcasing the opportunities of cooperation. But at the same time, I think for the first time in a while, we are seeing also how generation can cooperate. And this is more transformative, in my opinion. Pio was quoting the fact that one of the triggers of this food summit was Greta Thunberg going around and let's say, assessing the sustainability of food systems. Well, probably we all knew that there were some problems in food production, in animal husbandry, in how cattle is raised or chicken are raised, or all these kind of things. But suddenly we have someone that is mobilizing people, young people. And so this is not a scientific fact anymore, but it's a people factor, and it's a political factor, because suddenly also the politician knows that if they want the consensus of the new generation, they have to move in a certain direction. And this has happened in the climate environment, where I've been exposed to a lot. So to sum up, I would say Bites of Transformation is a living symbol of the need to go back to circular in society, because it's a dialogue among young change makers and decision makers, no? And this is also a way to go circular, because I think for a long while we've been thinking that, you know, society is a line, and there is at the end of this line the decision makers, and at the beginning the people who are trying to become decision makers. While now we have the chance to cooperate to make better and wiser decisions on a topic like this that is key for our health, our culture, our proximity, our diversity. So
thank you, Stefano. Thank you for all of you that came, participated, stayed here. The journey is just a beginning. This continues and continues with or without us. But make it contribute to make this journey continue, and see what's going to be next, and make it happen. And thanks again for all of you participating. You want me to give you so you make an announcement about
I would like to thank very much Dante Larini and all the team from the Swiss Pavilion in order to make a lot of efforts and to make this event possible, and also Rael from the Swiss mission in Rome, Diana from Università della Svizzera Italiana to contribute to the realization of this event, and also all the members of the Bites of Transformation movement, and also the members of the Middle East Mediterranean Summer Summit. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much to my colleagues, Mazen, Raphael, Aline. We're going to continue the discussion outside, where we're going to host you the Swiss way with food and drinks. So you're more than welcome to stay and continue the discussion outside on the rooftop terrace. Thank you very much to our listeners, and have a nice evening. Thank you very much.